The afternoon sun hung low over Manila, melting into shades of amber and gold as it reflected off the puddles left by the morning rain. The city was alive, horns blaring, jeepneys rumbling, vendors calling out their last sales of the day, but amid the noise and rush of the streets, a sound began to rise, a sound so rich, so hauntingly familiar, that it seemed to still the chaos of the city. It came from a corner near the old Quiapo church, where a young man sat on an overturned crate with a weathered guitar across his lap. His name was Raymond Cruz, though most people simply knew him as "that Elvis guy." Raymond's guitar had only 5 strings, its wood worn smooth by years of use, his clothes were faded, his shoes torn at the soles. Yet when he opened his mouth to sing, the air itself seemed to change. He began softly, "Wise men say only fools rush in." The notes floated above the crowd, carrying something more than melody. It was soul, it was longing, it was a memory of love and loss and hope all at once. People slowed their steps, a child tugged at his mother's hand pointing toward the voice. A street vendor selling roasted corn stopped mid-call, her eyes widening. Even a jeepney driver accustomed to the daily grind, turned off his engine to listen. For a moment the busy street stood still. Raymond's voice sounded so much like Elvis Presley that it was almost unsettling. But it wasn't mimicry, it was emotion. It was as if his heart had found a home in the king's music. His dark eyes were closed as he sang, lost in a world only he could see. Every lyric carried weight, every strum of his guitar felt like a heartbeat. When the last line, "But I can't help falling in love with you," faded into silence, a hush followed. Then came the claps, slow, uncertain at first, then loud and thunderous. People tossed coins into his open guitar case, some smiling, others wiping tears they didn't expect. "Grabe, parang si Elvis talaga," someone whispered. "He really sounds like Elvis." Raymond smiled shyly, bowing his head in thanks. "Salamat po," he said softly. He gathered the coins carefully, each one representing another day of medicine for his mother, Alina, who lay sick in a small rented room a few blocks away. The hospital had said her condition was serious, but treatment was too expensive. Raymond didn't have much, just his voice, his guitar, and an unshakable hope that somehow those would be enough. Every evening he sang until the sun dipped behind the skyscrapers, then walked home through narrow alleys filled with the smell of frying garlic and car exhaust. Children would sometimes follow him giggling and shouting, "Elvis! Elvis!" and he'd grin, giving them a playful wink. But when he reached home the smile would fade. Inside their dimly lit room his mother lay on a thin mattress. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. Still, when she heard his footsteps her eyes lit up. "Did they like your singing today, Anak?" she asked. Raymond knelt beside her, taking her fragile hand. "They did, Mama. We earned enough for your medicine today." Well, she smiled, her fingers brushing his cheek. "You always say that, but promise me, Hijo, don't sing just for me, sing because it's your gift. Because the world needs to hear it." Raymond lowered his gaze. "The world doesn't listen to people like me, Mama." "Oh, but one day it will," she whispered. "One day, they'll hear your heart." That night, after she fell asleep, Raymond sat by the window, looking out at the glowing city skyline. In the distance he could still hear laughter, car horns, life. But above it all, he imagined himself standing on a grand stage, lights blazing, the crowd silent and waiting. Not for fame or riches, but to make them feel what he felt every time he sang. He picked up his guitar and played softly, the strings humming beneath his calloused fingers. Each note was a prayer, each lyric a promise, to keep going, no matter how hard things got. The moon rose over the rooftops, bathing his face in silver light. Somewhere in the night, a whisper of wind carried his voice across the city. People in nearby stalls paused, listening without knowing where the music came from. And for a fleeting moment, the noisy city felt at peace. The next morning, Raymond was back on the same corner. The routine never changed. He would tune his guitar, adjust the strap with a strip of cloth and begin again. The same songs, the same heart. But on this particular day, something different happened. A young woman with a backpack and a camera stopped across the street. She wasn't from here, her accent, her pale skin, and curious gaze gave her away. A tourist. She watched him sing Suspicious Minds, with a smile spreading across her face. She lifted her camera and began to record, unaware that this small act would soon change Raymond's life forever. As he sang, his eyes briefly met hers, and he felt a strange sense of connection. Like the universe was quietly weaving something unseen. When he finished, she clapped and approached him. "You sound incredible," she said in English.
You sound just like Elvis."
Raymond chuckled softly. "Thank you, ma'am. Just trying my best." She dropped a few bills into his case. "I'm going to post this online," she said, still amazed. "People need to hear you." Raymond simply nodded, thinking little of it. He had no idea what going viral meant. To him, life was simple: sing, earn, survive, repeat. As the sun began to set and the lights of Manila flickered on, he packed up his guitar and walked home again, unaware that the world was about to discover him. That night, while he fed his mother a bowl of porridge, somewhere across the ocean, a video of a Filipino street singer began spreading like wildfire. But Raymond didn't know that yet. All he knew was that tomorrow, he would sing again. Because that's what his mother asked of him. Because that's what his heart was made for. And somewhere in the noise of the world, a quiet destiny had just begun to hum its first note. By morning, the city had already forgotten yesterday's street songs. Jeepneys were back in motion, horns blaring, vendors calling out to early commuters. But somewhere in the world, thousands of miles away, a video was making its quiet journey across the internet. The clip was simple: a young Filipino man, sitting by the roadside, his hair tousled by the Manila wind, singing "Can't Help Falling in Love." His voice was raw, powerful, yet gentle enough to make strangers stop mid-step. The title read, "Elvis Lives on the Streets of Manila." The woman who filmed it, a tourist named Amelia Brooks, had posted it to her small travel blog. She had thought only her friends would see it, but within hours it began to spread like wildfire. By noon it had 100,000 views. By evening, 1 million. Comments poured in from all over the world. "This can't be real. That voice, it's Elvis. I got chills. Who is this man? I'm crying. You can feel his soul." People began searching for him. The Filipino Elvis, street singer Manila, Ramon Cruz. But Raymond knew none of it. He was back on the same street corner that afternoon, strumming his guitar as he always did. His earnings from the day before had gone to his mother's medicine, and he was grateful just to have enough for another dose. When he sang, he forgot everything, the heat, the noise, even the hunger. He just closed his eyes and let his heart speak through the strings. But today, something felt different. More people gathered. Some pointed their phones at him. Others whispered his name. A group of teenagers him after a song, giggling in disbelief. "Kuya, ikaw ba si Elvis in TikTok?" One asked. "Are you the Elvis guy from TikTok?" Raymond blinked. "TikTok," he repeated, confused. They showed him their phones. There it was, his video, the one Amelia had filmed. Millions of likes, hearts and comments scrolling endlessly.
That's you, man! You're famous!
One of them said. Raymond stared at the screen in disbelief. "Famous," he said softly, almost afraid of the word. He smiled awkwardly, unsure of what to say. He'd never even owned a smartphone, let alone seen himself on one. By nightfall, reporters began appearing near his corner. Small local news crews, bloggers, people with microphones asking questions he didn't know how to answer. "When did you start singing Elvis? Do you know you've gone viral? What does it feel like to be world famous?" He just smiled shyly and said, "I sing because it makes people happy." Back in their small room, his mother could barely contain her pride. "The whole world is listening to you, Hijo," she whispered between coughs. "Didn't I tell you? One day they'd hear your heart." Raymond sat beside her, holding her hand. The glow of a borrowed phone screen illuminated her tired face as she watched his video play again and again. Her eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "Your father loved Elvis too. He'd be so proud of you." Raymond nodded, his own eyes glistening. His father, a tricycle driver, had died when Raymond was just a boy. He used to play old Elvis songs on a broken cassette player, teaching Raymond how to sing along. "It's not about sounding perfect," his father used to say. "It's about meaning every word." That night, Raymond strummed his guitar softly as his mother drifted to sleep, her breathing shallow but peaceful. Outside, the city hummed, but inside their small home, there was a quiet miracle unfolding. The next morning, his life changed again. A black SUV pulled up near his corner. A woman stepped out dressed in smart casual clothes with a lanyard around her neck. "Are you Raymond Cruz?" she asked. He hesitated. "Yes, ma'am," she smiled. "I'm from ABS-CBN. We'd like to interview you for a feature on talented street performers. You've touched millions online." Raymond's eyes widened. He had never been on TV. The idea scared him, but he thought of his mother, and how happy it would make her. That evening, under bright lights and a camera lens, he sat nervously as the interviewer asked about his life, his dreams, and why he chose Elvis. Raymond spoke from the heart. "I grew up listening to Elvis because of my father, but when I sing his songs I don't try to be him. I just sing what I feel. Maybe that's why people hear something real." The anchor smiled. "They do. The world sees your heart, Raymond." The next day, the interview aired, and overnight his story became global news. CNN, BBC, even American talk shows mentioned the Filipino Elvis. Messages flooded his inbox, people offering help, music deals and invitations. And among them was one that made him stop breathing for a moment. "I invite Ionto u Arles Gautialas Angias." They wanted him to fly to the US to audition. All expenses paid. He showed the email to his mother, trembling with excitement. "Mama, they want me to sing abroad." Her eyes welled up. "I told you, Hijo. One day the world would hear you." In the following weeks, strangers came to his street corner just to see him. Some brought gifts, new guitars, clothes, even a phone. But Raymond never changed his routine. He still sang for the people on the streets, the drivers, the vendors, the tired workers passing by. Because fame didn't change where he came from or who he sang for. One evening after finishing, "Love Me Tender," a young boy approached him. He said shyly, "My papa lost his job. Can you sing for him?" Raymond smiled gently. "Of course." He began playing softly, his voice wrapping around the fading daylight like a warm blanket. The boy's father stood nearby, tears glistening in his eyes. Raymond had no idea that this moment, quiet and unseen, would matter even more than the millions of views online, because his songs didn't just travel through the internet, they touched hearts that were broken, lonely, and forgotten. Late one night, after everyone had gone, Raymond sat alone with his guitar beside him. The streetlights flickered. He opened his mother's medicine box. It was nearly empty. The thought of leaving her behind, even for a few weeks, made his chest ache. He picked up his phone and rewatched that first video, the one Amelia had filmed. For the first time he saw what the world saw, a young man singing with everything he had, despite having so little. He whispered, "Thank you, Amelia," even though she'd never hear it. And as the night wind rustled through the streets, he realized something profound. This wasn't about luck or fame, this was about purpose. The world might have found him by accident, but his music had always been meant for them. He closed his eyes and began to hum softly. His mother stirred in her sleep, smiling faintly at the sound of her son's voice, and somewhere across the ocean, people were still watching his video, sharing it, crying to it, unaware that the man who had moved them all was sitting in a dimly lit room, holding on to the only thing he ever truly owned, his music, and his heart. The morning air in Manila was heavy with the scent of rain. Raymond woke before dawn, his heart still buzzing with disbelief. On the small wooden table beside him lay the printed email, creased at the edges from how many times he'd held it, reread it, and whispered prayers of gratitude over it. He had been invited to World's Got Talent Los Angeles. For most people, it might have sounded like just another opportunity. But for Raymond, it was everything. It meant the chance to sing on a stage where dreams came true. It meant the possibility of earning enough money to lift his mother out of poverty, to finally afford the treatment she so desperately needed. He looked over at her, still asleep, her chest rising and falling slowly. Even in her rest she looked fragile, her skin pale, her breathing thin. He reached over and gently adjusted the blanket around her shoulders. "Mama," he whispered softly, "just hold on a little longer, I'll make you proud." Later that day, a television crew visited their small home to document his preparation. The neighborhood was abuzz with excitement. Children peeked from doorways, neighbors gathered outside, and the sound of cameras clicking filled the narrow street. Raymond smiled for them all, but behind that smile lived a storm of worry. The airline tickets were paid for, yes, but the hospital bills were not. When the reporters left, he sat quietly beside his mother's bed. She looked weaker that evening. "Ma," he said softly, "I got the tickets today. The show's next month." Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then you must go, Joe. You've worked for this." Ramon hesitated. "But who will take care of you while I'm gone? The medicine, the rent." She squeezed his hand weakly. "The Lord will take care of me. You take care of your dream." Her words were gentle but firm, filled with the strength of a mother who had carried the weight of poverty her whole life, yet never let it crush her spirit. Still, Raymond's heart felt torn. How could he chase his dream when the person who gave him that dream was fading right before his eyes? The days passed quickly. The world kept watching him online. His following grew to millions. People sent letters, gifts, even money to support him. But every night, he would still return to that small room, kneel beside his mother, and pray for just one thing: time. Then one evening, just a week before his scheduled flight, everything changed. He was at his street corner, singing "Love Me Tender," when a neighbor came running toward him, her face pale. "Ramon, your mother, she's not well. Hurry." He dropped his guitar and sprinted through the rain-soaked streets, his feet splashing through puddles. When he burst into their home, his heart nearly stopped. His mother lay unconscious, her breathing shallow, her pulse faint. "Mama, Mama, please." He shook her gently, tears blurring his vision. The ambulance ride felt endless. The sound of sirens echoed through his chest like a drumbeat of dread. At the hospital, nurses rushed her to the emergency room while he stood outside, his hands trembling, his clothes still dripping from the rain. After what felt like hours, a doctor emerged, his face solemn. "Her condition has worsened. Her heart is very weak. We'll do everything we can." Raymond nodded numbly, his world collapsing around him. He sat in the hallway, clutching his guitar like a lifeline. He wanted to scream, to beg, to trade every ounce of fame he'd gained for just one more year with her. Days passed in a blur of machines, beeping monitors, and whispered prayers. Raymond barely ate. He sang quietly to her bedside every night, songs of hope, songs of love, songs that once echoed through Manila's streets. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." Her eyes would flutter open sometimes, her lips twitching into the faintest smile. "Still singing, Joe," she'd whisper. "Always, Mama," he'd reply, wiping his tears. "Always." Then one morning, as dawn broke over the city, she reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, her grip weak, but her eyes still shone with the same love that had guided him all his life. "Promise me something," she said softly. "Anything. When you sing, don't sing for the applause. Sing for the ones who can't. Sing for the poor, for the broken, for me." A tear streamed down his face as he nodded. "I promise, Mama." She smiled gently, and with one last whisper, I love you, my son. She slipped into sleep that would never end. The hospital room fell silent. Only the steady beeping of the monitor remained, until even that stopped. Raymond's world shattered in that instant. He fell to his knees beside her bed, his sobs echoing through the sterile room. Fame, opportunity, dreams, all of it felt meaningless. What was the point of a stage when the person he'd wanted to sing for the most was gone? The nurses gave him time. He stayed there for hours, holding her hand, whispering every thank you he'd never said, every I love you he'd ever felt but couldn't express. The funeral was small. Neighbors came, fellow street performers came, even the young boys who once called him Elvis, stood quietly, hats in their hands. Raymond didn't sing that day, his voice, his gift, felt lost. But that night alone in the dark, he heard her words again, sing for the ones who can't. He picked up his guitar, fingers trembling, and began to play. His voice cracked at first raw and heavy with grief. But as the song went on, something inside him began to lift. Each lyric became a prayer. Each note became a promise. He wasn't singing to his mother anymore, he was singing for her. For every mother working late to feed her children. For every son still chasing a dream that feels impossible. For every heart that has known loss and still chooses to love anyway. When the producers called, asking if he was still coming to Los Angeles, Raymond almost said no. But then he remembered his mother's smile, her faith, her words. He whispered himself, she believed in me. Now it's my turn to believe in her dream. He packed his guitar, the same old one with 5 strings, and the photo of his mother he kept by her bedside. He boarded the plane with tears in his eyes but resolve in his heart. As the plane lifted off, Manila shrinking beneath the clouds, he looked out the window and whispered, I'm still singing, Mama. And somewhere deep in the heavens perhaps she was listening, smiling, proud of the boy who once sang on the streets, and was now about to sing for the world. The lights of Los Angeles shimmered beneath the plane as it descended, glowing like a sea of stars. For most people it was just another night in California, but for Raymond Cruz, it was the beginning of something he never could have imagined. He stepped out of the airport wearing the same jeans and worn leather jacket he'd used back home, his old guitar strapped to his back. Everything around him felt unreal, the wide highways, the glass towers, the cool air of a foreign land. He couldn't help but think, Mama, can you see this? A van picked him up from the airport, the driver cheerful and talkative.
You're the guy.
The Elvis from the Philippines, right? Man, the world's been waiting for you. Raymond smiled shyly, gripping his guitar. Just Raymond, sir. Just Raymond. They drove past the city lights, past billboards and palm trees until they reached the massive World's Got Talent studio. The building was alive with sound, voices, laughter, footsteps, and the constant hum of anticipation. Backstage, contestants from every corner of the globe were warming up, adjusting their instruments, or silently praying. Raymond found a quiet corner and sat with his guitar. He looked down at the old photo of his mother he kept in his wallet, her smiling face, her tired but kind eyes. This is for you, he whispered. When his turn came, a stage assistant tapped his shoulder. You're next. His heart pounded as he followed her to the wings. Through the curtains, he could see the judges' table. 3 of the world's most famous faces. The audience stretched into the distance, thousands of people, cameras flashing like stars. The announcer's voice boomed, next up, all the way from Manila, Philippines, please welcome, Raymond Cruz. Applause filled the auditorium as he stepped onto the stage, guitar in hand. The bright lights hit his face, blinding for a moment. He blinked, took a deep breath, and looked out at the sea of faces before him. The first judge, a sharp-eyed man known for his brutal honesty, leaned forward. So Raymond, tell us a bit about yourself. Raymond cleared his throat. I come from Manila, Philippines. I used to sing on the streets to help my mother with her medicine. I never thought I'd be here. I'm just grateful. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. And who are you singing for tonight? Another judge asked gently. Raymond smiled faintly. For my mother. She always believed in my voice, even when no one else did. The crowd grew quiet. Then, he lifted his guitar, strummed the first few chords and began to sing. The first note hit like a wave. Wise men say, only fools rush in. The audience fell completely silent. His voice was rich, deep and filled with to-be imitation. It carried the timbre of Elvis Presley, yes, but it carried something more, truth. Each word seemed to echo through the hall, wrapping around the hearts of everyone who heard it. The lights dimmed slightly, a single spotlight focusing on him. The camera zoomed in on his face, his eyes closed, his expression tender, almost in prayer. But I can't help falling in love with you. When he reached that final line, the sound was not just heard, it was felt. The judges sat frozen. The audience didn't clap, didn't breathe. For a full 3 seconds after he finished there was nothing but silence. Then, an explosion of applause. People leaped to their feet, some cried, others cheered his name. One of the judges, visibly emotional, wiped away tears before pressing the golden buzzer, the coveted signal that sends a contestant straight to the finals. Golden confetti rained down like a dream. Raymond stood there, overwhelmed, his hands shaking as the music swelled around him. The host rushed to the stage and grabbed his arm.
You did it, Raymond!
You made the world believe again? Raymond could barely speak. His voice cracked as he whispered, This is for my mama." A backstage crew members hugged him. Other contestants congratulated him. But he slipped away to a quiet hallway, clutching his mother's photo against his chest. "Did you see that, mama?" he whispered, his tears falling freely now. "They heard you, they finally heard you." That night, as the show aired worldwide, millions watched the Filipino street singer who sounded like Elvis Presley. Social media exploded with messages of awe and gratitude. "I haven't cried like this in years. He's not copying Elvis, he's carrying his soul. That man just healed something in me." The video spread faster than his first one. News outlets replayed the performance, calling it the voice that stopped the world. Even celebrities shared it, some calling him the truest artist of our time. But for Raymond, the greatest moment wasn't the fame or the praise, it was a quiet one. That night, he sat on his hotel balcony, guitar in hand, looking up at the moon. He imagined his mother there among the stars, smiling at him. He whispered softly, "I didn't just sing for them, mama. I sang for you. For everyone who ever dreamed but didn't have the chance. For every voice that went unheard." Then, he strummed his guitar and began to sing once more, just for the night sky. "Take my hand, take my whole life too." His voice drifted into the still air, blending with the distant city sounds below. A sound engineer walking by paused, eyes wide, listening to the hauntingly beautiful melody echoing from the balcony. He later told the production team, "I swear, it didn't sound like one man singing. It sounded like two, like someone was singing with him." The next day, Raymond woke to messages from all over the world. People thanking him for reminding them of love, hope, and the beauty of music that comes from the soul. In interviews, he never spoke about himself. He spoke of his mother, the streets, the kindness of strangers, and the power of never giving up. When a reporter asked, "How does it feel to make history, Raymond?" he simply smiled and said, "I didn't make history. I just sang the truth." That performance didn't just make him a star, it healed something in people. The world, weary from its noise and divisions, had been reminded that real magic still exists. And it came not from a millionaire or a celebrity, but from a humble Filipino boy who sang on the streets to save his mother, and ended up saving hearts around the world. That night, as the world replayed his song over and over, Raymond sat quietly, guitar resting against his knee. The stage lights had faded, the cheers had ended, but his mother's voice still echoed softly in his mind. "Sing for the ones who can't." And so, with tears glistening in his eyes and the hum of the city below, he whispered, "Always, mama, always." Then he began to hum again, softly, gently, each note rising into the night sky, carrying with it the love of a son who sang not for glory, but for the promise he'd made in a hospital room long ago. The applause from that night in Los Angeles still echoed in Raymond's mind long after the lights dimmed. The world had fallen in love with the Filipino street singer who sang like Elvis, but what they didn't see, what the cameras couldn't capture, was the quiet humility behind that voice. Fame came rushing toward him like a wave, invitations to perform on talk shows, recording contracts, and interviews in multiple languages. But amid all the noise, Raymond's heart remained tethered to one memory, the gentle hum of his mother's lullabies in a small wooden home back in Manila. He returned home after his world tour to a country that had waited for him like a proud parent. The moment he stepped off the plane, people greeted him with tears, flowers, and banners that read, "Welcome home, the king from Manila." Children held signs with his face printed next to Elvis's, and news anchors crowded the airport for a soundbite. But Raymond, wearing his usual denim jacket and carrying the same old guitar, smiled shyly and said, "Thank you, I'm still just Raymond." When he visited his mother's grave the next morning, the city's noise seemed to fade away. He placed a single jasmine flower, the kind she used to put in their small altar, on the headstone and whispered, "Ma, we did it. The world heard me, but I only sang because you believed I could." His voice cracked. "I kept my promise." He sat there for a while, the wind carrying the faint melody of an unseen radio somewhere nearby playing, "Love Me Tender." The sound made him smile through tears. "Wes, you still have good taste in music, Ma," he said softly, looking up at the sky. In the months that followed, Raymond could have chosen a life of luxury. Sponsors offered him endorsement deals. International producers begged him to move to the US permanently. One even promised to build a Las Vegas tribute show just for him, a Filipino Elvis experience. But Raymond politely declined. Elvis didn't just sing songs, he told them during one meeting. He sang stories about love, pain, and hope. "I want to do the same, but for people like me, for the ones still singing on the streets, hoping someone listens." That's how the Voice of Hope Foundation was born. At first, it was nothing more than a small project. Raymond used his own money to buy secondhand guitars, refurbish them, and give them to street musicians across Manila. Then he started organizing open-air, kindness concerts, where street performers shared the stage with known artists. Each performance was a celebration of humanity, a bridge between those who had fame and those who only had dreams. One night, during one of these events, an old man approached Raymond after the show. He had tears in his eyes and a trembling voice. "You don't remember me," he said, "but years ago, I used to sing beside the underpass on Taft Avenue. You gave me your water bottle one day and said, 'Keep singing, Koya.' That small kindness kept me alive." Raymond froze. The memory hit him like sunlight through a storm. He smiled and hugged the man tightly. "Then it was worth it," he whispered. Every note. The story of the voice of hope spread far beyond the Philippines. Global media covered it as the singer who used his fame to lift others. Donations poured in from fans across the world. Raymond didn't just use the funds to build music schools. He made sure each center was open air, filled with laughter and light, so no one would ever feel small, unseen, or forgotten. He made sure every student knew that talent wasn't defined by where you were born or how much you owned. He told them, "Music belongs to everyone who has something to say from the heart." The streets taught me that. One day during a small graduation ceremony for his foundation's first batch of young singers, a little boy asked him, "Kuya Raymond, do you think I can sing like Elvis too?" Raymond laughed warmly. "You don't need to sound like Elvis," he said, kneeling down to meet the boy's eyes. "You just need to sound like you. That's the voice the world is waiting for." Years later, when Raymond's story was turned into a global documentary, people cried watching the final scene. A clip of his first street performance intertwined with his grand performance on stage in Los Angeles. The world finally saw that behind the bright lights was a man who never stopped singing for love, never stopped believing that kindness could echo louder than applause. When asked in an interview what he believed made his music so powerful, Raymond said quietly, "Maybe it's because I never sang for myself. I sang for my mother, for the people who walked past me, for the dreamers who were told they'd never be heard. I think when you sing with love, people don't just hear it, they feel it." The interviewer paused, visibly moved. "Do you ever miss the street where it all began?" Raymond smiled. "Every day. That's where I learned that the smallest stage can still change the world if your heart is in the song." Decades later, even after Raymond passed away peacefully in his sleep, people still played his videos online. His foundation continued to grow, led by young artists he had once mentored. On his gravestone, simple words were carved beneath his name: "He sang not to be heard, but to make others sing." And every year, on his birthday, people across the Philippines would gather in parks, subways, and streets to sing Elvis songs in his honor. Children who had never met him would belt out, "Can't help falling in love," with laughter and pride, their voices rising into the night air like stars over the city. In those moments, through every melody and every note of kindness, the world remembered Raymond Cruz, the boy who sang on the streets, the man who gave music back to the people. And the heart that proved you don't have to be a king to carry the soul of one.